Alright, I'm just gonna do it. My mic sounds terrible, but that's life. I need to do a video because nothing else planned. Don't know what else to do. The rest are fill around on solo online layout, asset layout, and do something. I don't know. Anyway, so hey guys, welcome back to another video today. Welcome back to another video where today I'm reacting to Thomas and Friends Season 7, Season 3. Thomas and Friends Season 7 in retrospective. 2003, the Thomas Retrospective. The series is starting this channel, I think 2 years ago now. It does take a while to get around to these. That's because he uploads every 3 weeks now. I think it's 3 weeks, or it could be a month. I don't know. Anyway. Oh my god! Like that? And like that. Michael Donald! Anyway, so let's get into the video. Yeah, I think he's gonna do Jack and Pack next. Or he's already done it. Hold on. Ignore that I'm using Opera GX. No, he hasn't. For some reason, I thought he did. I think that's next. Anyway, let's get started.
This video was brought to you by my loyal patrons. Pledge today and you can participate in choosing what video comes to the channel next. Link in the description.
I paid for the £10 one for like a month. For a month because I couldn't afford to keep buying it. We did the Q&A. I asked the questions. He answered one. I think I can't remember the first one. I answered that well. The other one, you got confused. I want to know where he gets the episode footage. Like how does he record it? Where does he get it from? Did he get it from a website or something?
Dear Christopher,
He mistook it for
here is your friend Thomas the Tank Engine.
his
He
background.
wanted to come out of his station yard and see the world.
He mistook it for
These
his
stories
background.
tell you how he did it.
Season 7.
Mistake of this. I should explain myself more, but still. And I guess you only get 2 questions. Or he's apparently really busy. I mean, he has a girlfriend now, so. Wait, no, fiance. So. Fiance. Well done for him. She's gonna be Mrs. Goodrich. Which sounds very posh. I don't know if he actually is posh or not. It's American, so. It's from San Francisco, so. You know.
7. We've finally reached it. What many consider the final season of the classic era.
What the fuck was that?
What many consider the final season of the.
What is this meant to be? Dust? This meant to be dust. And then just rushed it and they couldn't record it again. Also, this looks like Edward. Does it ignore the whistles? The rest is like an Edward. It's maybe because they're basically the same. But one's a tender, one's a tank.
The classic era of Thomas. After coming back and discovering season 6 is rather mid compared to the previous seasons.
I still think season 6 is better than season 4. I don't like season 4 that much. It's better than what we have now. Obviously. Don't know who would say otherwise. But I think season 6 and 7 are better than 4. I don't know what's better, 6 or 7. They're both, I think they're both great. Serious. One had Emily, one of my favourite characters. One had Salty, a character that I like better than half the roster. He's, he's good character. I like him better than Diesel. Anyway, yes, I think season 6 and 7 are just better than season 4. Can't explain it. I just found watching season 4. Last time I watched it, I tried to watch it. I got bored. Like 6 episodes in. I'm gonna guess that's because the first 2 episodes are lame. Don't like the first 2 episodes. The other ones are fine.
I'm very curious now how Season 7 will fare. Will it continue the gradual downward spiral, or will we be pleasantly surprised? Let's dive in and see what the final classic season of Thomas has to offer. Season 7 is undoubtedly a season of lasts. For many, this was the final Thomas production that many of the show's veterans were involved with, including show creator Brett.
I forgot this is not a season, an episode reaction, so I can put in full screen without getting copyrighted. I don't know if I'll get copyrighted. Shout out to Unlucky Tug. Shout out to Unlucky Tug.
Brett Allcroft, director David Mitton, art director Robert Galgaliers, and composers Mike O'Donnell and Junior.
Okay, so this is Mike O'Donnell. Who just Junior Campbell. What does he do nowadays? Oh yes, he's Scottish. Let's go. What is he doing nowadays? Scottish composer, songwriter, musician. Not understand what he does nowadays. They should update his photo. This is alright. They didn't update his photos. Michael Putland. Wrong person. If it should look like this was his middle name, that would make more sense. But Google, what are you doing? Yeah. Yeah, I have this up because I was wanting to try and find an episode that's not that great to watch, but my tail's got rid of most of them, so
Campbell.
I have to watch YouTube content creators videos. I want to do it, but it's very lazy, and also can't. And also, I would do a tier list if I can think of one that I haven't done. I think I've got deals to do, but can't remember. I need to look at it.
This was a very interesting time in the production history of Thomas and Friends. After her demotion last year following the failure of Magic Railroad, Britt Allcroft started to focus on other work back in the States, where she now resided in Santa Monica, California. She acted as a creative consultant for Season 7, but her role was limited, and would end up being her final involvement with Thomas before fully stepping away. In late 2002, Hit Entertainment bought out Ghislaine, while the next season of Thomas would still technically be produced under Ghislaine until the deal went full.
Hit finally gets Ghislaine. What the hell is that title? Hit shares are up sharply today on the news that it's 139 million offer for Thomas the Tank Engine Group Gillian Entertainment been recommended by the board, writes Mira Silva. Shares are sharply up today. Yep. Shares in entertainment of shop 11p to 280p, as Ghislaine Gall, chairman, Adam Mills said. For careful consideration and a comprehensive review of alternatives, the board have concluded that Anquish, it's a weird name, Anquish of Ghislaine by Hit is in the best interest of the shareholders. Ghislaine shares were down 2.5p to 2.5p. Hit, which owns Pop the Builder and Penguin the Penguin, said it wants to join forces with Ghislaine to create in a quote, and I quotes, one of the leading independent children's studios in the world. It first tried to buy Ghislaine 2 years ago, but was rebuffed. Said the word rebirthed much. And in Tulsa, three Chinese rivals. The smart money is backing. That's difficult to say. Anyway.
Fully through in early 2003, Season 7 would be the first season distributed under the new parent company. Hit was involved with the creative process for this season, giving various studio notes and changes.
See if I can read it, Alex. I can't read handwriting. This looks like I said brow. Brow, he did. Where is it? I'm a scientist. Oh, that's not for Thomas Friends. Look, the hell? This part is like the Love Choice song.
Changes to episodes. David Mitton, in particular, became increasingly frustrated with Hit's involvement, giving him a lack of creative freedom. He was notoriously quite unimpressed with the selection of stories that were pushed forward this year. While still the director and story consultant of Season 7, he would hang up his hat after this and leave the series, retiring the very next year. His final episode,
and dying 5 years later.
with a writing credit, was Toby's Windmill. Season 7 was a big production, featuring 26 episodes of the usual show, 6 of which were entirely narrow gauge focused, as well as the new Jack and the Pack spin-off series being filmed alongside it. Various new shots of the engines on sets like Tidmouth sheds that would be used in the Pack episodes were filmed during the Season 7 shoot. More on the Pack's production in the next episode. Alec.
So you literally said it's cut his next. So we won't get Season 9 until like 2024. Because that's how long it takes to make these. Just annoying. But you need to put quality over quantity.
Alec Baldwin's contract expired, and his departure from the series.
It's a weird thing to say, but I'm probably the first to say it, but I would say he's a Thomas and Friends legend. Thomas and Friends mastermind. He's like Megamind. If he was in the movie. He's like Thomas and Friends Megamind. That makes no sense. Imagine Megamind's not a thing. He's Megamind. He is a Megamind. And I'm just gonna call him Thomas and Friends legend. He's also in Boss Baby 2. A good DreamWorks movie. The first one isn't really good.
Series created a rather unique problem for the show. They had no US narrator lined up.
what I find weird and also interesting, George Carlin and David Minton died the same year, months after each other. I don't really like his narrations, to be honest. But comedian, no, he's a comedian, so he's a funny man, funny guy. You could say he's really steamed up with funniness of kind of in this mid one.
In a quick haste to meet the deadlines of the first season 7 home release in the US in early 2004, UK narrator Michael Angelis stepped in.
That is such a shit photo. You can tell it looks like an old photo. You think there's better ones of him. Even this one's decent. Probably not easy. Right? Probably not at least free. This one looks better. More up to date. As up to date as you can get. Still find it shocking. Still find it shocking that I dated Gail Platt. Boys from the Black stuff. Alright. What? Why is this? Why is that? I know he was in other movies before, but he was also in Corey. Let's find Corey in this street. Come on. Come on. Jesus, he did a lot. Yeah, he really did a lot. Jesus. Yeah, you played Concentrate in 1972. He was a bad guy. You're pretty sure he robbed. He was a robber, and he got away with it.
And re-narrated the episodes on that VHS for the American audience, changing terms such as the Fat Controller to Sir Topham Hatt, trucks to freight cars, etc.
Later, the Fat Controller spoke to Thomas. Later, Sir Topham Hatt spoke to Thomas. The three engines were soon at work. Thomas and Percy were bumping trucks. The three engines were soon at work. Thomas and Percy were bumping freight cars.
Freight cars. That sounds like a ute. Freight cars, that sounds like a car like a ute or something. Doesn't it sound like a box on wheels? It's basically what it is. An open box with wheels. Trucks makes more sense. You Americans. Why?
6 of these Angelis narrated episodes
If you watch the channel, you're amazing.
were released on New Friends for Thomas in 2004, and it was the only ever time the American audience heard Angelis' voice. This was mostly done in a haste to meet the deadline.
You all better thought he was at least decent. Because he is. What's better than Legend? He is a Thomas Written Legend, but I would say he's better. He's higher than that. A beast. I previously said he was a Thomas Written god, but probably not the best idea to say that. For some, I don't know what. I feel like I shouldn't really say that. Doesn't sound nice. Thomas and Friends. Beast. He is Mr. Beast of Thomas and Friends.
But it also served as a test to see if they could use the same narrator for both dubs, as they had done years before with Ringo Starr. While there's not much information about it out there, I can only assume Angelis did not go over super well here, and a brand new US narrator was found quickly after. And who did they find? Well, no other than Michael Brandon.
It was an exciting day on the island of Sodor. "Good morning," called Harold.
Michael Brandon is an American actor who was living in London at the time Hit put their feelers out. He got the role, partly due to the tight deadline needing someone quickly. Brandon went on to narrate all of seasons 7 and 8 in one go for the American audience, but I could be wrong about that. Season 7's distribution was interesting. In the UK, the season aired completely as normal starting in 2003. In the US, however, there was some delay, and 2003 was spent getting the rest of season 6 out. 2004 was the year Hit Entertainment would push forward with its rebrand of the show with season 8. As that was a huge rebrand, it of course took priority in their marketing, leaving season 7 in a bit of an awkward spot. Seasons 7 and 8 were distributed alongside each other here, both in airing and on home media. When season 8 aired on PBS and Nick Jr.
Right, I know from 2002, late 2002, or late 2002, early 2003, they started to rush it because entertainment was taking over. But my god, breathe. If you actually took the time, I think people would be happy with getting a season every 2 years instead of every year. I think people can watch previous seasons. I mean, I didn't know that Thomas was still going after season 13. I didn't. I knew about the movies. I didn't know that they were still going. I thought they had ended by now. Well, I just didn't really care at that time.
Here in the US and UK respectively, they were in half-hour blocks with 2 longer season 8 episodes and a shorter season 7 one sandwiched in between. As the episodes were being aired alongside season 8 ones, several changes had to be made to make them all seem cohesive. The biggest change, of course, was the score. Season 7 was Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell's last season.
This is better full. He kind of looks like that guy from Paddington without the beard. I don't know. I just see Hugh Bonneville
As composers.
Was he more funnier? They were both in something to do with Thomas. He was a composer. He made the music. Hugh Bonneville voiced act. Played a character in the movie, and then a few episodes, I think.
And they were subsequently replaced with Robert Hartshorn for season 8.
That looks like a terrible fool. He looks like he does not want to be there. Who uploaded this to the internet? If you at least took one closer and actually asked him, "Are you ready?" He looks like he's about to go to prom. It's last year of high school prom.
Onwards. Mike and Junior would have happily stayed on Thomas, but Hit wanted a new feel for their rebrand of the show come season 8. Mike and Junior did in fact complete all of season 7, and their versions were fully released on home media in the UK, Japan, and other countries. However, Hartshorn was tasked with rescoring all the episodes for them to match the feel of season 8. Yeah, it's confusing, I know. These rescores are the versions the US got.
It was a splendid day on the island of Sodor.
It was a splendid day on the island of Sodor.
By total situational circumstance, only 3 episodes featuring the original Mike and Junior score, complete with Michael Brandon narrating, were released on home media here, on the VHS Thomas and the Jet Engine, giving us a unique glimpse into what a proper version of the season would have been like here.
In the summertime, there is no better place to be than the island of Sodor.
Season 7 first aired in the UK with the episode Emily's New Coaches on October 6th, 2003. I have always deemed Season 7 as a boring season, and I think my rationale for that was how I bore witness to it when it was coming out. With Michael Brandon narrating, the new score, and how closely it was tied to Season 8 here, I always just felt like it was proto-hit era. I am happy to say that I don't really think that anymore. Watching this right after a somewhat mid-Season 6, I see quite a few improvements. First thing I notice right away is the use of color. Season 6 was a very dull-looking season in my opinion, and perhaps the show crew knew that too, because suddenly everything looks so much brighter. The sky is a slightly darker blue, the greens pop more, there's more use of colorful flowers, the cinematography is a bit more dynamic. Shots like this one with focus on the shrubbery and greenery in the foreground, and the engines blurred out in the distance. It's rather pretty. The season, in general, is nice to look at. It's no Season 4 or anything, but it's nice. That's not the case for every set, of course. Some of the sets look kinda flat to me, and I feel this is an issue I mostly take with the narrow gauge sets. A lot of them look like the world just sort of ends beyond the trees or the rock faces. For
this scene, yeah, I see why that is. Because you can't see past these trucks. Trucks are on the way, so you can only see the track up to here, because it like goes down. You can't really see this much there because, well, when the brake fan is in the way. Pretty close to the brake fan, yeah. This trailer brake fan thing is in the way. Yeah, this looks like the end of a line. End of a line, like depot or something, I don't know.
look like the world just sort of ends beyond the trees or the rock faces. For a railway that's meant to take place in the mountains, there's a severe lack of big sweeping mountains in the backgrounds on them. This may just be a me thing, but I feel there is a lack of implied distance. I should emphasize though that this isn't the case for every set this year or anything. Just something that I noticed on some of them. Speaking of the narrow gauge, I admire the big focus on the narrow gauge characters this year. It's a rare occasion we get 6, count 'em, 6 episodes focused on them, instead of the usual 3 or so. I really like that. How the episodes are written, well, I think...
Okay, I'm guessing he's not counting season 4, because that's you don't count their introduction. In their introduction, they got like 13 or 12. 12 to 15. Got most of the season. So, guess he's not counting it.
I think they're the low point of season 7 personally, and I'll talk more about that when we get to characters. I think they're the low point of season 7 personally, and I'll talk more about that when we get to characters.
I agree. I can't think of any narrow gauge episode from season 7 that are good. Especially not this one.
But I love that they all got focus. I like that they had the restraint not to have them interact with the main.
Why? Like, do they all have? Why do these two have angry faces on? Whoever made the faces? Why? Makes sense for Duncan. The entertainment must have got someone to make it, so they can be prepared for the next few seasons. If not, why?
I love that they all got focus. I like that they had the restraint not to have
Definitely makes sense with Duncan, because Duncan,
them interact with the main cast at all, and just let them stand on their own. There's a notable focus on digital effects this year. They did use them previously in Season 6 rather sparingly. For instance, Percy's steam here is CGI and then fades into real steam after the shot is cut. Pretty seamless. Or like here in Duncan, where they digitally make the no fishing sign flip into place so it matches how it looks in the close-up shot. I never noticed it before, but now I can't unnotice it. Season 7 seemed to play with them more, adding little effects in the background here and there to add a little more life to shots, such as adding rushing water to the river in this stock footage from Season 4. The snow falling is a digital effect, the rain effects here, the light glows from the headlamps, Thomas's steam emitting here, the dust cloud above Diesel here, and that highlight on Spencer as he rushes by the camera. Not every effect is totally convincing, but there are a few here or there that I had to look twice at to see if it was real or not.
The bellows and PNG. Is it? Oh, that's really well edited. Wait, PNG is it? It's also kind of trippy.
And I think that's a testament to how beneficial blending model and
I found this episode scary when I was younger, and I see why. So I think it's also called a great episode.
digital effects can be when done well. At the beginning of the video, I said Season 7 is a season of lasts. That was definitely the case when it came to the production side of things, but the episodes themselves also cast a sense of finality. This season doesn't feel run-of-the-mill. It feels like a celebration, in a sense. Well, what do I mean by that? For one, all the characters get episodes. Seasons 5 and 6 were very main character-focused seasons, with some of the secondaries getting focus. Not this year. It's more of a, let's give everyone an episode, with most of the mains all just getting a single episode each. With a couple exceptions, every character gets a lead this year. They even bring back some old favorites, notably Bulgy, who gets a sequel story to his original episode all the way back from Season 3. In fact, I think the only characters that get more than one Spotlight episode are Thomas, Gordon, Fergus, Arthur, Duncan, and Skarloey. It does in a lot of ways feel like a, let's all give the characters one final hurrah before everything changes. In that way, this really does feel like a finale season, and part of me wonders how intentional that was. Did the show crew somehow see the writing on the wall? And for another, there's the score. Specifically the original Mike and Jr. one. Their score is entirely new. Every season prior would create new themes, but would also borrow and reuse bits from previous seasons. That's not the case with Season 7. Everything, every cue, every theme, every piece of incidental music is totally recreated from the ground up this year, even bringing back themes we hadn't heard for years, like Henry's theme, and Rusty's theme. This gives the season a totally unique feel separate from the previous 6 seasons. It's still clearly the classic Thomas score, but with a new, softer feel to it. The season in general is kinda laid back, and I think the new softer score really matches it. Some people might not like it, and I admit I was a little indifferent before, but I like it quite a bit now. Robert Hartshorn's rescores admittedly aren't too bad. There are a couple themes that are really catchy or fitting. I really like that theme at the beginning of Percy Gets It Right. It really gives off that autumn harvest vibe. I really like Emily's theme in general.
When this plays, when I hear this, I think of nostalgia. Nostalgia for it.
And I really love the runaway music in The Runaway Elephant. That piano is great. Totally different for Thomas. Though sometimes this new music does feel somewhat out of place. Like in Edward's Brass Band, where the lost band players just play a random tune instead of an SOS signal.
By now, Edward was mended and hooked up to his coaches. "I can hear music," said his driver. "That's not music," wheezed Edward. "That's an alarm."
By now, Edward was mended and hooked up to his coaches. "I can hear music," said his driver. That's not music, wheezed Edward. That's an alarm.
Really, Edward, how did you deduce that that was an alarm? Just sounds like music to me. These new scores are
Surprised they know how to do it in so
fascinating. They do give the season a totally different feel, and in turn that provides the viewer an option of what feel of the season that they want to watch, if that makes sense. I'd be lying though if I said they do give the season a totally different feel, and in turn that provides the viewer an option of what feel of the season that they want to watch, if that makes sense. I'd be lying though if I said I didn't prefer Mike and Junior's. I'll always prefer anything in its original, intended presentation. There's a lot of good in Season 7, but it's not without fault. The season is held back by the writing at times. We're still in an era where morals are flat out stated more often than not.
It's not nice to copy the way others speak. You hurt Salty's feelings.
I'm sorry, Percy, said the Fat Controller. We must do a better job of listening to you in future. Maybe spotless records are made to be broken, smiled Thomas. And then mended again, finished Arthur, just like friendships.
And some characters regressing or acting just plain out of character, but I'll talk more about that in a bit. There are a couple instances this year where the people are used basically as the engine's hands, allowing something totally reckless to happen just so the plot can occur. Like Duncan's driver removing a danger sign so they can cross a bridge. Or Duncan's driver allowing something totally reckless to happen just so the plot can occur. Like Duncan's driver removing a danger sign so
what did he remove? Nothing.
they can cross a bridge. Or Duncan...
You didn't remove anything. You just like patted it on the head, patted it on the top of it. I don't know, stroked it like a weirdo.
Duncan's driver allowing them to proceed without a brake van. Geez, Duncan's driver is kind of a f***ing idiot, isn't he? I have a few very specific criticisms of this season, and some of these may sound nitpicky. The first is the over-reliance on stock footage from previous seasons. Usually I don't care about stuff like this, but Season 7 uses a lot of it, to the point where it's distracting at times. Sometimes an old clip will show up and it's so out of place that it's jarring.
Thomas was enjoying himself. He was bringing the maypole. The farmer's children waved.
Did you really not have a more recent tracking shot of Thomas to use there?
That face that screams nostalgia. Would you say that's good?
The show has grown so much visually since Season 1. Using Season 1 footage here just looks so wrong. Here's another very specific criticism. The sound design during crash sequences. Crashes in previous seasons were always loud with splintering sound effects to really emphasize the impact. In this season, and I think it may only be a thing in this season, they really toned down the sound. In Arthur's crash and Spotless Record, the trucks barely make a noise. Oliver's crash here is very quiet.
Yes! There is!
As is Edward's collision with the ship boiler. Notice how all of these are accompanied by a silly kazoo or slide whistle sound.
Barge crashed through a pipe. The trucks were delighted.
The silly kazoo slide whistle sound effect after a crash has always been a thing in Thomas. I'm not trying to say it was a Season 7 thing. A fun fact, the first time it's ever used is in Tugs, believe it or not. But it is used in almost every crash this season. It started to get a little annoying how many times it's used.
And the balloon started to fall.
Will you cut that out?
Around this time, and I think it might have been after Season 7, or maybe around the same time it was coming out, I'm not sure, Thomas got into some controversy regarding crashes on the show being too violent for kids. And I kind of wonder if this softening of the crashes with the sound design was the show's way of trying to avoid that criticism. A pointless venture if that was the case, since the crashes in Thomas are something that kids loved about it. Not to mention, they just returned the loud sound effects in the next season anyway.
the crash it is amazing. This crash is amazing. I hate. Wait. I hate how this truck just doesn't even go on. It just goes off to the side, and then they show it. That's why I don't think it's good crash. How fucking unsatisfying this is. Just hits his buffers, goes up, turns, then and goes backwards. That was the check can's fault.
And now this is a very specific criticism. I don't like the way they repainted the human figures this year. There's something about the tiny mouths and the eyes that look so lifeless. Topums aren't even looking in the same direction half the time.
Thank you, said the Fat Controller.
Is that clothes on? That's condition.
There is not a thought going on in this guy's head. None of these criticisms
No, he is. Made of fucking wood. Is it wood? He has made of fucking wood.
really ruin the season though, at least for me,
Play.
but I still figure they were worth addressing. All this being said, Season 7 still always felt off to me, and I never could really pin down why, even after mentally divorcing it from the hit era that came after. But after this latest rewatch, I think I've figured out why I feel that way. It's the narrators. Michael Angelis returns as the UK narrator as always, but he just...
Okay, I need mentally prepare for this. Some of it may be true. Just have to go for it. Alright. What do you have to say about the best Thomas narrator?
sounds bored. After season
True. Yeah. Yeah.
Seasons 5 and 6, where he's putting his all into his performance,
Oh, said Thomas. The driver tried to put on...
I'm just gonna guess why. In 2002, when you're playing it, in late 2002, when he was playing narrating season 7, what was going on in Michael Angelis' life? Oh. I was going to say his marriage. But if that ruins the whole thing. That ruins the whole thing I was about to say. Wait, he shooting her? Oh Jesus! 10 years though. Good on you. No, he retired in 2015. Well, that ruins the whole thing. I'm just gonna guess because Hit Entertainment, they probably brought in like a new voice director. He was like told to do a bunch of stuff. Like, no, do it again. This time, they're more boring because kids don't want to imagine that it's their bedtime. And we're trying to help parents get them to sleep. So act bored, gentle voice. What just your normal voice. Alright, now I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'll get Tim to do the rest.
The brakes, but Thomas couldn't stop. Oh boy!
suddenly he's talking slower, and sometimes it's just flat out mumbling.
It gives me great pleasure to present you with 2 new coaches. But he had to be brave and find Fergus. Thank you, sir.
I mean,
2 new coaches. But he had to be brave and find Fergus.
I wonder why. Because there's a fucking mountain with trees, trees and fences that are randomly placed, so they're probably broken, and all pebbles. Okay, it's called a landslide. I wonder why he's whispering.
Thank you, sir. I'll be the best boss ever.
Either his heart isn't in it, or the new hit producers told him to talk slower.
I got something right. I basically just said that. Big brain, big Tom, big. I'm about to say big Thomas brain, but no, thanks. No. I got big brain. Not really for general knowledge, but Thomas knowledge. And Mario Kart knowledge, yes.
He sounds bored, and as a result, the episodes just feel boring. It's a good example of how much a production is lifted purely by the voice performances. It's no wonder the US audience didn't really connect with Angelis, considering this was their first exposure to him. The old enthusiastic Angelis does come out at times.
Slow down, whistled Rusty. I can't! Duncan cried as he shot past. Run out of water? He teased. Yes, snapped Spencer. I must have a leaky tank. The trucks were delighted. He's fallen.
He was probably forced to do it in him at night, and he was like, "Oh, I need some coffee afterwards. Wouldn't it be best if I get coffee now, so I can actually feel energized, and I can actually do my lines how I did last time, did season 6. Shut up. Do your fucking lines." That was I didn't swear because you probably get fired.
And in the water.
But overall, not his best season. Michael Brandon, on the other hand, in my opinion, just doesn't fit at all. I've never been a big fan of the guy, and I don't think he works as a narrator for Thomas, at least with the sort of voice that he's putting on. I find Michael Brandon very baffling. He has done narration roles before, and when he's using his normal speaking voice, he actually sounds quite good.
By the end of 1941, Britain had already been at war with Nazi Germany for 2 long years. Those were dark days, and not much had gone right.
So, ignoring the fact that I'm comparing a World War II documentary to Thomas the Tank Engine, maybe not the best comparison. You gotta admit, he sounds pretty good here. But in Thomas, he's putting on a more wacky, goofy-like voice. Like, I know it's a kid's show, and it's okay to be a little silly, but he gives the characters the weirdest voices.
I'm a great Western engine, he chuffed one day. I shouldn't have to shiver.
Why is Oliver a cowboy?
Not me,
Texas.
puffed Gordon. You never catch me looking so ridiculous.
Why does Gordon sound like a chain smoker?
Oliver being from Texas. It's not really near. It's Texas. Okay, yeah, they are. Texas is at south of America, USA. But nah.
Thank you, said Rheneas. You were very brave to help me.
Why does he sound like a geek?
To whoever signed off on that nasally voice for Rheneas, I just want to talk.
I just want to talk to him.
Dad, this is ridiculous!
I just want to talk to him. I just want to talk to him.
Alec Baldwin gave the characters cartoony voices previously, but those worked because they were contrast by his more dramatic voice as the narrator. Here, the narrator sounds almost as goofy as the characters. Evidently, Brandon must have struck a chord with kids though, because he went on to narrate the show for 9 more seasons after this.
Oh no!
Now, I don't want to say I totally hate Brandon, because I don't. If anything, I appreciate how enthusiastic he was in his narrations, and while I don't like all the voices he does, I like that he at least attempted to make all the characters sound different from each other, and I admit that there are some moments where his delivery is quite funny.
Ooh, it's beautiful! I told you it would be a piece of cake. Sir Topham had paused for a moment. With many cakes in it, I'm sure.
I just don't think he really fits the timeless storybook-like world of Thomas. It's been a hot minute though since I've watched the US dub of the later model series stuff, so I'd love to believe that maybe he gets better over time. I guess we'll find out as we continue on in this series. I tried watching both dubs of the season for the video, but I couldn't get through either of them. So I decided to do something a little interesting.
機関車トーマス
I watched the Japanese dub, and that's when it clicked with me. The Japanese dub of Thomas is amazing. The only country to give the characters their own voice actors from the beginning, and it gives the show a totally new tone.
洗車しないとね
ああ洗車してやるとも見たこともないほど真っ赤になってやる僕はそれほど素晴らしい機関車なんだ
In Japanese, this sounds like. If I was to sit I'd probably like start like 10 times more. I mean, yeah, I'm not.
The season feels exciting with the right amount of enthusiasm from the voice actors, and it made me realize that the episodes this season aren't that boring at all. Every episode is totally unique in concept, and doesn't retread old ground. Had Alec Baldwin for some reason narrated this season, or if Michael Angelis narrated it with that same enthusiasm he had in season 6, I don't think I would have ever found this season boring or unappealing at all. I'm not saying season 7 is devoid of problems beyond the narrators. It definitely has some major characterization issues and strange production choices. But I don't know. In some ways, this feels like a return to form. The new writers from last year seem like they have a better grasp on the world now, and have found their footing, for the most part. I find it all a little more interesting than Season 6. There's a bit more going on, there's more world building, focus on pretty much every character, more inspired story ideas that aren't that gimmicky in concept, most anyway, and there's a grand sense of finality to it. In many ways, Season 7 feels like a big final hurrah, a celebration of all things classic Thomas. Coming into third place with one episode is, well, a lot of characters. Henry, Edward, Toby, Percy, James, Donald and Douglas, Oliver, Peter Sam, Salty, the list goes on. This is a weird season. All tied for second, we have Gordon, Arthur, Fergus, Duncan, and Skarloey with 2 leads each. And in first place, to no one's shock, Thomas with 5 leads. Wow, finally a season where Percy isn't in first.
5 leads? I can't name any of them.
How about that? Season 7 had quite the varied cast, where not really anyone had more focus than the others. The secondary characters this year had just as much focus as most of the main characters, with the exception of Thomas, of course. It will be impossible to talk about everyone this year, so I'll just stick to the ones that I find significant. Let's start with Gordon. I'd like to first address some criticism of how I talked about Gordon in the Season 6 retrospective. In that video, I talked about how Gordon felt very one-note and was grouchy and pompous all season. He felt very much like he was the grumpy one and nothing else. Some people pointed out that that in fact wasn't a Season 6 thing, it was a Season 5 thing, as Gordon is pretty much a prick throughout all of that season too. And you know what? You're alright about that. I'll take the L there. I think I didn't really notice it in Season 5 because, well, it's Season 5 and everyone is kind of a dick that season. In Season 6, where everything is a bit more light-hearted and a little kinder, Gordon being a sourpuss really stood out.
Pudding, Percy, teased James. Chalk ice on wheels, chipped in Henry. Disgraceful, said Gordon pompously.
He was just a downer. But I agree with the criticism. It wasn't a Season 6 thing. I'm not perfect, guys. I bring this all up, though, because I think Gordon was handled wonderfully in Season 7. He's only in 4 episodes total, but each one of them showed a different side of his character. In Best Dressed Engine, you get typical grumpy, pompous Gordon.
Just realised I forgot to unpause. I'll just continue. You've already probably watched the video, so.
More negative note, kinda goes back and forth between what type of character he is meant to be. Sometimes he's very mature and responsible, and sometimes he's a cheeky child. I recently said in my 10 Hidden Gems video that this is a problem in the later Brenner era, and it definitely is, but it didn't start there. If anything, I'd say Season 6 is probably where it started, but it didn't really bother me that year. This year, it does, and I'll explain why. We have 3 episodes where Thomas, along with Percy, treats someone like garbage. In Spotless Record, Thomas intentionally sets Arthur up for trouble, which leads to a huge crash. I don't know what Thomas expected to happen. Of course the trucks would cause a derailment.
He'll never stop the trucks from singing, laughed Thomas.
This just feels so mean-spirited. In Salty's stormy tale, he and Percy make fun of Salty behind his back.
It may be sunny now, matey, but there be a storm coming. It may be sunny now, matey, but there be a storm coming.
Thomas has always teased others, yes, but it's always to their face and in a joking manner.
I'm going to the scrapyard today, Edward called to Thomas. What? Already? You're not that old, replied Thomas cheekily.
We can see what's been put upon.
It may be sunny now, matey, but there be a storm coming. It may be sunny now, matey, but there be a storm coming.
You could like how he says it, and just when it be like him, when it sound like him. So you could say that's bullying, or you could say that's Thomas been jealous.
Thomas has always teased others, yes, but it's always to their face and in a joking manner.
I'm going to the scrapyard today, Edward called to Thomas. What? Already? You're not that old, replied Thomas cheekily.
We can see what's been put upon you, said Thomas.
Careful the ghost engine doesn't get you, Thomas said.
Here it once again just feels mean-spirited and a little out of character, if you ask me. I think the only episode this year where the mean-spirited side of Thomas kinda works is What's the Matter with Henry. In this one, Henry has suddenly fallen ill again, and Thomas thinks he's faking it to get out of work. So he and Percy scheme up a plan to leave all their trucks for Henry, forcing him to haul an extremely long train that he can't handle. The only reason I feel that I kind of understand where Thomas is coming from in this one is that it has been a very long time since Henry was ill, all the way back in season 1 before he had his rebuild. So to go all these years with no problem, and then suddenly he's ill again, yeah, I can kind of see how that'd be a little suspicious from Thomas's perspective. Thomas is pretty shaky this year, but there's also some gems with him. Not So Hasty Puddings is a fun Thomas versus Elizabeth story, following up on them not liking each other that much in the previous season.
I'm reliable too, huffed Thomas. Apparently not reliable enough, Elizabeth chuffed.
And I like that Thomas's hatred of fish is still alive and well in Something Fishy.
Just enjoy the fresh, salty smell of the fish. Phew, puffed Thomas.
And I love this little exchange between him and Gordon.
I look my best, and you know why?
Why?
Because a Duke and Duchess are visiting, the Fat Controller will be choosing me as their special engine. Pah!
If you want a good example of how a mature, true-to-current character Thomas should be written this late in the game, then look no further than 3 Cheers for Thomas. In this one, Thomas and Bertie race again, but when an emergency occurs, Thomas forgets about the race instantly and does the right thing to help the children.
But Thomas had forgotten about the race. He was thinking about the children. I can't let them down, I can't let them down.
Allowing Bertie to take the win. Contrast this to the much earlier episode Thomas and Bertie, where Thomas was young and wanted to win the race due to his competitive nature. Thomas has grown a lot since season 1, and this episode shows that wonderfully. In the official order of season 7, this is the finale episode, and while it's a simple one, I think it is a nice cap on Thomas's character journey over the classic series, and in that regard, it's a perfect finale. I would say that most of the narrow gauge engines regressed this year, with the exceptions of Rusty, and maybe Peter Sam, who had the only really great episode of the bunch in my opinion. I like the continuity of him being friends with the refreshment lady now, following their incident all the way back in season 4. I also love the concept of the refreshment coach introduced in this, based on an actual coach used on the Tallyclin Railway. An inspired concept, and some good world building in this one. Duncan's learning not to be a bigot and putting his differences aside with Rusty for being a diesel is totally thrown out the window.
I wish all diesels were like you. Let's be friends.
How would you know? Wheesh, Duncan, you're only a diesel.
And rheneas being worried he is unable to give the children a fun trip is just odd for him.
How am I going to make the Children's Day really special?
I just want to talk to him. I just want to shoot him. I just want to talk to him.
Skarloey is the big one, being totally out of character in the infamous episode, The Old Bridge. I talked about how before his fear is understandable in this episode, since they show the crazy inciting incident that instills the fear in him. But it still feels wrong for the character of Skarloey to give up or go against orders.
We'll need a bus now for our passengers, sighed his driver. No, pleaded Skarloey. I'll get them to the station or burst.
But Skarloey wouldn't cross the bridge.
It is admittedly still nice that when he hears rheneas is in trouble, he rushes to the rescue immediately. I like that the brotherly bond between the two is still alive and well, despite both of their regressions. There is a slew of new characters this year. We got Arthur, Murdoch, Fergus, Spencer. All the new characters are so inspired, all being based on preserved engines in real life, and most wearing the same colors. They all look like real trains. Each has a purpose for being on the island, and they fit into the show very well. The biggest new face this year is Emily. We all know Emily becomes a main character in the next season, and considering HIT had a hand in the creative process this year, I wonder if that was the plan from the very start. If it was, then I have to give them some credit here. Emily is treated like any other new character this year. She only appears in 4 episodes, but they managed to showcase what type of character she is, while also not making it like she's taking over, if that makes sense. They simply familiarize the audience with her. She would then really be pushed in Season 8 as a main, and finally joining the main cast at the Sheds in Season 9. Her transition from newbie to a main was gradual, and I think it was handled well. Overall, though, I don't think Emily is a character that's worth screaming about, if I'm honest. She's kind of generic, in my opinion, not really having any personality traits really exclusive to her, at least.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of true. The only reason I like Emily Cook because she's in GTI. She's voiced by Teresa Gallagher, the voice of Nicole Watterson from Gumball. That's the reason. That's the reason to like her character. To like her as a character. I don't know what else.
In this season. With the exception of her debut episode, because that plot is about how she is new to the railway and unfamiliar with Annie and Clarabelle, etc., the rest of her appearances could have been swapped with someone like Edward, and nothing would really change. Some may disagree with me on that, but I do still think they were extremely smart with how they set her up here. But the season's MVP award goes to Arthur. Arthur is a new character that didn't appear a whole lot, but they told a great story with him, and in only 2 episodes. Arthur is a character that just works in Thomas. He's set up in his first episode, where they establish he's a more proper sort, with a spotless record to boast.
And he's got a spotless record, the Fat Controller added.
Thomas tricks him into crashing, and the two make up at the end. In his second episode, Thomas is the one that crashes, and Arthur helps him. They're totally even now. Arthur goes from being posh and proper and polite, and never insulting anyone.
No thank you, wish the new engine. He'd never been naughty before.
And only after being forced into a rather imperfect life thanks to Thomas, starts becoming someone who isn't afraid to get dirty or engage in some teasing banter.
Do I smell a fishy engine? He teased.
He slowly becomes one of the boys, if you will. In that second episode, Arthur discovers the fishing village, and a love for the sea he never knew he had. I think it's interesting that they chose a Midland engine for this, one that clearly wears LMS on his sides. That is definitely something that only trained people would get, and
one thing that I find annoying is how many times this mic fucking changes. Like, yeah, Arthur's an amazing engine. He just, his episodes just tell an amazing story. But he's also kind of a asshole, you know? Yeah, I don't really like him much. Yeah, he's such a great character, yeah. If that even worked, I hope that worked.
and I appreciate that. It makes total sense he'd be fascinated by the sea. As a Midland engine, he probably never saw it. By the end of the season, Arthur...
So he's from Manchester and Birmingham. Oh god. Don't want to him sodor.
is in a completely different place from where he started, both as a character and literally. He's a very inspired concept for a Thomas character, one I wish they used way more than they did in the following seasons. Funnily enough, I don't think there is a clear standout episode for Season 7. None of the episodes really try to push the boundaries, so to speak, and they're all fairly similar in tone. If I had to choose an episode that sticks out for me, I guess I'd pick Snow Engine, purely for the visual of an engine in the stomach of a giant 50-foot snowman. I'd say out of the whole season, this is probably the most outlandish the season got. And even then, the episode is still fairly grounded and rather sweet. I love how its protagonists, Oliver and Toad, each have a little arc. Oliver goes from hating snow to finding some magic in it, while Toad's arc is the exact...
Though I hate snow, because snow ends up turning into ice. Because snow is cold, you know, cold
Exact
weather.
opposite.
Begging your pardon, Mr. Oliver, said Toad, but I think snow is splendid. You were right, Toad, Oliver called. There are some magical things about snow. Perhaps, Mr. Oliver, shivered Toad.
That looks like flour. That's what it looks like. It looks like flour.
Poor Toad. For worst episode, I think I'd have to go with the obvious choice and pick The Old Bridge, purely for the character assassination of Skarloey. We talked about how season
Hitman. Was this the Hitman beta version?
Season 6 had some slips with characters, but a lot of those felt like regression to a Thunder Mountain thing, complete with open carriages that resemble roller coaster cars. The end result is just lame. Just tilting the camera to try and make the sets look steep and dangerous. It's dumb, and I can't help but wonder why Rheneas didn't just stop immediately as soon as he realized he was on the wrong track.
Oh no! This line is closed for repairs! Bust my buffers!
Well, instead of speeding up, why don't you stop and go back to the points right there, you stupid idiot?
Father.
Sum up of the season is Salty's Stormy Tale. This is a very middle-of-the-road episode, which beautifully illustrates the season's high points and its lows. The episode is focused on supporting characters, puts them in a rather epic situation, and has some really impressive shots and cinematography. On paper, this episode should be awesome, but then it's held back by regressed character work and its rather forced childish moral, of which is just flat out stated.
It's no nice to copy the way others speak. You hurt Salty's feelings. We're sorry if we hurt your feelings, puffed Thomas. We were only copying you because we think you're grand. Now they will all work together and have fun together, as good friends should.
The whole Thomas and Percy plot doesn't even correlate to the lighthouse stuff. They are totally separate, and are just lazily clumped together at the end. I'm sure every person and their grandmother can guess my favorite episode this year. To no one's surprise, my favorite is Gordon and Spencer. I've talked highly about this episode so many times in the past, and it really comes down to how inspired the concept of Spencer is, and his rivalry with Gordon. They wanted to introduce a character that could rival Gordon, so they looked into some real-life inspiration, and chose the best engine they possibly could have, an A4 class, the ultimate development of Gordon's class.
This is Spencer. He's the fastest engine in the world.
Huh. Again, it's something only the train nerds would appreciate, and I love that. I think Gordon is great in this episode, as I already talked about. It's just all round written well. Inspired concept, great new character, very memorable. I love it. I'll be honest, I kind of struggled to think of a single word to describe this season, but I think I've landed on a phrase that sums it up fairly well. Eye of the Storm. Season 7, while a flawed season no question, is a step up from the previous, at least in my opinion. It's that nice, calm rest period after a turbulent time, and before another one hits. Season 7 is visually pretty. It's slower and tries to recapture that storybook feel. While the narrators this year left some to be desired, the score is nice to listen to, and almost every character had something to do, even if they're not really in character. It's definitely a season of lasts. Easily. Classic Thomas's swan song. Classic Thomas may end here officially, but we're not exactly quite done with it yet, as we still have 13 more episodes from this era to look at. In the next retrospective, I will finally be looking back on Jack and the Pack. I don't know if many others considered the Pack to be Classic Thomas, but they came from this era, so I guess they sort of count. After that, we'll move on to Season 8 and onwards. I have to say, Season 7 rather delighted me on this rewatch. It's flawed, but for a season I found pretty boring when I was younger, it was nice to come back to, and realize that it had quite a lot to offer. Maybe it's just my taste changing as I get older, who knows. Just want to give another quick shout out to my patrons for all your support. Instead of doing our usual video polls, this time I instead asked the patrons what they wanted to see, and many told me they wanted to see the channel dive back into the Pixar universe again. I'm not going to confirm anything just yet, but we will be revisiting a few films from that company very soon. With reaching the end of Classic Thomas in the Retrospective series, seems like now is the right time to start branching out a bit, you know? That's all from me. Thanks again for your support. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you all in the next one.